are here to stay. Oh, 'tis now delight for the red and white. Imps are here to stay.
And there he is. Morning, peeps. How are you? It's to phrase Cornell, because obviously Cornell is the king of podcast. Boom, back again. It's your boy, Gary, in Lincolnshire Wolds. I'm not quite in the bar this morning. I thought I'd put a quick video together about Lasse Sorensen signing, but Fee's outside doing the lawn. So I am in the office with my phallic cactus. As you can see here, that's not purposeful, and a little bit of information and news for you. So I'll keep an eye on some of your comments. Wicked, Cornell's on board already on the hype train. Morning, Cornell. Hope you're well, my friend. And I'm going to go through a couple of comments, and then we'll jump into the body proper. So Connor Pierce, morning. Lasse seems like a great addition to our midfield. Ryan says, I forgot my dog. I haven't. He's been out. I was actually going to do a dog walk, but the ignorant little bastard didn't want to go far enough for me to even start recording. So there we go. Morning, Kate. Hope I'm well. I am indeed. Without being pragmatic, I will hold my opinions about him until I've seen him play. I had far too many promising prospects that have come. People have lauded them before they've seen them for themselves. Kind of where I'm going with it this morning. It's kind of where I'm going with it. So let's go to the facts. So we've signed, I think it's Lasse or Lasse Sorensen. We'll say Lasse Sorensen. I don't know. You know what I'm like with my pronunciations. He's 21-year-old. We'll call him a footballer for now, from Stoke City. Played for them, I think, once in the Premier League, 6 times or 5 times at the end of the aborted 2019-20 season in the Championship. I've read that's after coming back with some phenomenal physical stats from keeping fit during lockdown. Then he was farmed out on loan to MK Dons, where he played 34 times. Now, that sounds like quite a lot, but when you break it down, it's 24 in the league. He didn't appear in either of the games against us, and he made only a handful of appearances after Christmas when they brought 2 players in. So he kind of dropped a little bit by the wayside, I think, towards the end of his MK Dons career. Now, I've had a look into why that might be, because I've got some comments from Stoke fans a little bit further down here in a minute, where they seem quite keen to have kept him. 1 or 2 felt that he might be in and around their first team picture, but they also spoke of the things that he needs to work upon, and not just the things, the positives. And I think it's always important when you sign a new player not to just wax lyrical, particularly about somebody that we don't really know. It's easy to look at it and go, undisclosed fee, 21, Stoke City, pucker, but we don't know, do we? I've watched a few clips on MyScout, but when those clips are not goals and assists, it's always hard to get a balance. I did watch some goals and assists. That was in a 6-0 hammering of Norwich City's kids in the AFL Trophy. He looked very good in that game. Played right wing for a while as well, which is something else that I'm going to have to come and touch upon. So first of all, he's our second permanent signing of the summer. I think it's been long overdue. I wonder if he's somebody that we've been waiting for. There's certainly been talk from Stoke City that teams in the Championship were eyeing him, and teams in League One. I think these days with transfers, you always take that sort of thing with a pinch of salt, don't you? You think, well, like Steve Evans will always tell you that there were bigger clubs looking at the players he wanted to sign, because it immediately endears those players to the fans. I don't doubt for a second that there were other teams looking at Sorensen. 100%. We're the ones that have got him, so it looks like a coup. But it's easy to say that all transfers are coups before you've seen them play. A transfer is only a good transfer at the end of their first year at the club. And that goes for everybody. Mo Isa looks like a great bit of business on paper for MK Dons, but if he doesn't score 10 goals this season, he's going to be a transfer flop, and then it's not so good business. Will Grigg looked like good business for Sunderland, so it's easy to get carried away. What I would say is he certainly fits a model. I'm not going to say the model, because I think that pigeonholes Lincoln City as only signing certain types of players. It's important not to do that, because Chris Maguire is one player who obviously we've signed who doesn't fit what people might perceive to be the model. But when you look at it in a wider context, he fits the club and where we are at the moment. Yes, we want to sign younger players. We want to sign them for ourselves, and we want to develop them and sell them on. That's the harsh reality, and Sorensen seems to fit into that. So first of all, let's go and have a look. I've got 2 screens, so if I'm looking down here, please forgive me. But let's have a look at Football League World article this morning, discussing with Stoke City fans discussing the move. And so these are just some of the reactions, I think, for you to have a quick listen to. So hope we got a buyback clause just in case. That's certainly one of the comments. Really good composed midfielder. Good luck. We've got Stoke could regret this, depends on how much the fee is. That's an interesting point I'll come back to. Remind me if I don't in the comments. Big mistake in terms of the sale. That's come from somebody called George. Maybe not quite right, maybe not quite at the right level yet, but hopefully will improve with game time. So a little bit of balance, I think, there. And then David James Evans, personally don't agree with this. Should have had time to grow with the squad. Young lad, good footballer as well. Lincoln have got a good lad on their books now. And I'm quite interested in this last one. Wow, I really expected him to play this season. So I think overall the mark of a player moving and what we can draw without seeing him play is how other fans react. And I think Stoke City fans have held their hands up and gone, potentially he wasn't a first team player, but he's certainly somebody with ability. And I like it when I see words like good footballer. I like it. I've seen something composed midfielder, good on the ball, good technique. I like all that sort of thing because that for me kind of fits in with our ethos and the way we play football. You know, we want good players. We want people who are composed on the ball. We want people who are comfortable in possession. So I think in terms of the type of player and the ability level that he's at, I think it speaks volumes as to our transfer policy. I think it's exactly the sort of player that we were expecting to sign this summer, the one that comes out of nowhere, the Teo Edens or the Anthony Scullers, you know, these young players that need senior football in order to develop. And let's be honest, Scully and Teo Eden might be squad players now. They might be players that we consider Lincoln City players. Both are very good. Both came out of academies with very little football. Remember, Sorensen's got a full season of senior football under his belt from MK Dons. And I see several different types of kind of player within Sorensen. And the first one is Teo Eden, a player who had some experience. He'd been on loan at Ipswich, let's not forget. A player who can play multiple positions and who perhaps hasn't quite nailed down one position when he came to Sincil Bank. Now, if you ask me about Teo Eden, you'd probably say Teo Eden's a left back. And I think that that's what we need to do with Sorensen. And I was chatting to Jonathan Harries last night, an MK Dons fan, about Sorensen. And he said, yeah, you've got a good player here. You've got a player who's got potential. You've got a player who's composed, who's very good on the ball, but you need to find him a position. And I think that's the key. We don't know what Sorensen's key position is. And I've got Y-Scout open at the moment. I mean, I looked down his appearances for Stoke in the 2019-20 season. Defensive midfield, right central midfield, left central midfield. You then move into the following season at MK Dons. I think he played right wing back. He played right wing. He played defensive midfield. He played central attacking midfield. He's a little bit of a jack of all trades. And whilst I think that's all well and good from a squad perspective, and that could very well work in our favour, what he needs to do is find a position or a niche within our squad that he makes his own. And whether he does that with success or not will really mark how successful this transfer is. Teo Eden did it. Teo Eden, when he came in last season, central midfielder, and he at the beginning of the season, he wasn't our best central midfielder. That's Liam Bridcut. He wasn't our second or third best central midfielder at the time because that was James Jones and Conor McGrandles. Then George Grant dropped into central midfield as well. So then you had four central midfielders, all of whom were probably more suited to the way we were playing than Teo Eden. I'm not going to say better player, but were more suited to the way that we were playing. And I think that Sorensen could have that issue again. Early in his career, Paul Lambert defined him as a defensive midfielder, the holding midfielder, the Liam Bridcut, the Max Sanders. We play with one of those. Now, given the way that we play our football, unless we're going to a team that are going to overload us in attacking areas, I don't see us playing the double fours in front of the back four. I see us playing Liam Bridcut, and if he's injured, then we'll need an option, which is where Sorensen could come in. But Sorensen hasn't come in just purely to cover. If he hasn't come in to cover and he's not going to replace Liam Bridcut, which, as club captain, nobody is going to replace him, that's where then he needs to find his alternative niche. And I quite like this, looking back through his history, I quite like this inclination to play on the right-hand side, playing either right wing back or right wing. Right wing is somewhere where we desperately need somebody. If he is composed, he's got great delivery, I'm told. He's really good with a dead ball. He's got really nice technique. He actually could potentially be the right winger, because remember, we don't really use right wingers with lots and lots of pace. The way that we play is in triangles. We build up, we look to beat players. So players with pace, like Zach El-Bazedi, for instance, haven't found a niche within our squad. And often when we're passing and we're playing, the defensive, the opposition tend to sit quite deep because they know that we can hurt them. We do have occasionally pacey players like Brennan Johnson who are running from midfield as well. So I think it's interesting to see whether Sorensen fills that role, whether he can fill that role out wide or in the right wing-back role and kind of put some pressure on Regan Poole. What it does mean is if Regan Poole gets injured, we've got a guy that can play right wing-back. If we're desperate for a right winger, we've got someone that can play there. If, and touch wood, I hope, if Liam Bridcut does get injured and Max Sanders isn't making the grade, we've got a defensive midfielder. So I think it's really important. Sorry, for some reason, my personal assistant decided to ping up then. Don't know why. So I think it's going to be really important for Sorensen to find that niche. I think going forward, we still need to sign some players, but I think when you look at Dan and Lundley, you've got Tom Hopper, we've got Chris Maguire. I still think Theo Archibald is in for a big season as well. So we need to add to that. I don't see Sorensen being in that kind of collection. Luis Fiorini, possibly so. But I do see a place in the first team squad for Sorensen, and we're not going to pay money for somebody if we're not going to give him the opportunities. So it's going to be really interesting to see where he fits. Let's have a look through a few more of your comments before I carry on. And the first one I'll go to is Gab Sutton, great content creator, knows League One and League Two like the back of his hand. To my eyes, Lincoln midfield is already one of the stronger areas. Wonder if he's come into play possibly in a wider position. Great minds think alike. Thank you, Gab. And I hadn't actually read that before I put it on because I've got my camera in front of my screen, so I can't properly see. So yeah, again, I think he's probably come in to play wider, and it would be interesting. I think Michael's got a habit, hasn't he, of turning players into something that he feels they are rather than what they feel they are. I think Max Malburn thought that he was a centre-back. And suddenly the shopkeeper appears. I'm having internet problems. Absolutely shocking internet problems. So, Kate, yes, Gary has frozen for everybody else, but hopefully I'm back now. Just if you can see me now in the comments, please just comment below and say, yes, Gary is back. For some reason, the internet has been having a little bit of a fit with me. So talking about Michael and addressing people's key positions, he's good at making adapting people to different positions. I think we saw it with Brennan Johnson, played in a variety of positions. We've certainly seen it with Teo Eden. We've certainly seen it with Regan Poole. And I think that over the course of the season, we'll see it with Sorensen. It'll be interesting to see where Fiorini kind of fits into that as well. But I think Michael's very good at that sort of thing. I think Michael's very good, as is the recruitment team. I'm talking about Michael as a manager. He's good at looking at a player, seeing the strength, and thinking he will play there, we can put him there. And I think that's what he's seen here with Sorensen. So I mean, it was a signing that came out of the blue, wasn't it, as well? I had a meeting, I don't know if any of you remember the book with the Lincoln City stories. Well, that is a year late, admittedly, but that's coming through to publication. I've got a meeting with the club this afternoon on Zoom to discuss the title and the cover rather for the final stages. And I got a message saying I'm going to have to cancel, can't tell you why. But stand by your laptop, essentially. So 5:30 stood by my laptop, 6:30 stood by my laptop, got to 7:20. I thought, I'm not going to announce anything now. Sat down, eating my dinner, boom, up pops the email. So took me by surprise. We all expected it to be another man, didn't we? And if we have a quick look here, what happens when Teddy Bishop comes in? What will we see? A change of lineup for the mighty Imps? Quite right, Cornell. I wonder, is Teddy Bishop still on the horizon? Potentially, he can play 10, Teddy Bishop, so he would be somebody that you might put in along with Lundley and Hopper and Archibald and Maguire and that sort of thing. So I wouldn't rule out Teddy Bishop coming. Obviously, we need a keeper in Josh Griffith as well. I still think that we need another wide player. just naturally, I think that especially when you're playing intense football like we do, with lots of wide play, with lots of getting into key areas out wide, putting delivery in, those are the positions where players tend to tire, I think, more because they're doing an awful lot of running, especially in a Michael team where they've got a track back as well. So I'd like to see us have an option for both wide players. But if what we've just been saying is true, Sorensen could be one of those. Maguire is one. Archibald could be one. So we have got options in those areas. So, right. So let's go back and have a look at some comments. There are quite a few coming in. So first of all, Gab again. I look forward to seeing how this lad gets on. Didn't do too badly in the Championship with Stoke. Unlucky at MK with midfield competition. Yeah, I don't think you can really judge the fact that he didn't play an awful lot at MK. I mean, he played 34 games. Some as a sub, admittedly. If I have a look on here on Y-Scout at his kind of his minutes. 61 minutes at right wing back on the final day of the season, but other than that, there were all really substitute appearances. Apart from I think his last full game in the league, funnily enough, was also against Fleetwood when they won 3-1. He played 86 minutes on the 19th of January, and there he played left central midfield and right central midfield. So he kind of swapped in both those positions. Played attacking midfield for them on the 16th of January. So he was getting quite regular football up to the fact that they signed a couple of other players. I think McEachran was one. And then he kind of fell out of favour. So, in actual fact, when you look at then his 24 league appearances, thinking that he didn't actually play all that many from January onwards, he did very well in the first half of the season. So, right, so let's have a look at some more comments. Adam Bull says, "Morning, poor Charlie, no walk today. It's Charlie's own choice. Don't call the RSPCA. He's a lazy little dog. I wanted to go and do." I like to get 2 miles in the morning, get 5,000 steps, and get some of this. It's Christmas 2017 off, but unfortunately, I haven't been able to. So, Adam Bull again says he seems to fit our new way of working. That's obviously Sorensen, not Charlie, my dog. Pick them up, mold them, and sell them on. Indeed, I think at the moment, the only player we've molded and sold on is George Grant. Which wasn't a Michael pickup, but I do think that it takes a year or two. I don't think a club will take a punt on a player after a single year unless he's absolutely stand out. So I think come January, we might see people coming and sniffing around again for the likes of Monsmer and Eden if it doesn't happen between now and the beginning of the season, which, good God, I hope it does not. Sean, hello, mate. Any news on Sean Rowan? No, nothing. I know nothing at the minute. I sit out here in Louth. I don't see anybody. I am at the club on Thursday for a sponsors dinner. So whether any news will come out, I don't know. But I'm not kind of like one of the journalists that are in contact with the club all the time, unfortunately, so I don't know. Just to address that, Cornell, do I still see Teddy Bishop and Josh Griffith coming in? I don't know. Who knows with Michael and Jez? Who knows what's truth and what's not? Because their transfer policy is very, very hard to predict. Danny Cowley's wasn't. With Danny, you kind of, you could have a stab in the dark. You knew when he was looking at Boswick and Josh Giannelli coming back in on loan and Harry Anderson when we got into the league. You knew he would go back and look at players he'd previously been linked with. You knew kind of the players that he admired. Not so much now with Portsmouth, but certainly knew it with Lincoln. I don't think it's as easy here. I think that we, as fans, get very hung up on previous players, and if we did that correctly, we spotted Chris Maguire. Some spoke of Danny Hilton, who obviously also played with Michael, but I don't think that would happen. But then you also look at the players that come out of the blue, and now with things like Y-Scout and such a bustling and busy under-23 scene that there wasn't probably 10, 15 years ago, management and scouts can see players that we've never heard of. And when they come in, we're desperately scrabbling to try and find out. And I'd heard of Sorensen. I'm not going to hold my hands up. I didn't know an awful lot about him until I sat down and started researching last night. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to pretend. I think he's a great signing. I'm not going to tend to call him and say he's an unambitious signing. What I think he is a new signing who has got something to prove to himself and to the fans. I think that's the same with every signing. On paper, he looks very, very good. In terms of his stats, there's some good numbers here. His passing accuracy over the 2021 season was 82%, 44 passes on average per game. That's a decent accuracy. If you look at things like his passing forwards, for instance, and I haven't checked this, so this could be terrible. Forward passes per game, 14. passes into the penalty area per game, 2.4. Passes into the final third, 7.31. All strong numbers, all the sort of numbers that we saw from our attacking midfield players. So in that respect, he looks very good. But he wasn't one that you would have gone at the beginning of the summer. Michael Appleton and Lincoln like sign him. And let's face it, even the likes of Alan Nixon and people like that and Peter O'Rourke hadn't spotted this. So it wasn't a name that was being bandied about. And often the names that are being bandied about don't always happen. So Teddy Bishop, I don't know, we was going to MK Dons last week. He was going to come to sign us this week, and he's still not here. Wouldn't surprise me. I'd also not be entirely surprised if we didn't still see Lee Bonnis, the striker from Ireland. He's at Portadown, isn't he? I could see that happening as well, but we shall see. I think lack of strikers was one thing that held us back last year. I think when Callum Morton got injured, obviously there was Tom Hopper, but then we didn't really have the centre forward. For instance, Anthony Scully was a decent player, but is he a centre forward? Is he a winger? We don't really. I'm still not sure. I don't think Michael Shaw's would be interesting to see where Scully goes this year. Let's have a look. I'm not going to put anti-Steve Evans stuff up on your screen. Oh, I've done it by accident. Ball bags. We could jump in a pile of money and would still claim poverty. Correct. Scrooge McDuck. God, I think the only duck that Steve Evans is really fond of is with hoisin sauce. So let's have a look. Where does this leave players like James Jones? Fighting for a place, Sean, is the truth. He's a squad player. I think we've got some good squad players. Be interesting to see with James Jones this season. I think he's on the fringes. I think he's got an awful lot of work to do to put himself into the first team picture. But it's not unheard of. He's bounced back from injury before. I think he was really affected in the middle of the year. He had a good early start to the season, but I don't think he scored enough from open play. But you could level that argument against George Grant, to be fair, because a lot of Grant's goals were penalties as well. So Grant chipped in with a handful, James Jones chipped in with a handful. It leaves him fighting for his place. It leaves him sat on the bench, knocking on the door, and hopefully putting pressure on some of the players who are in our side to, if they slip up, he's in. So expect to see a lot of him in the EFL trophy. So Cornell, I can't read all of yours out, mate, I'm afraid, because there are so many. He does make a point here. I won't be surprised if Appleton goes back into Stoke City team to get and loan out Joe Bursic. Now, look, I'm going to address the goalkeeper situation quickly. So I had a chat with Nick Oxbury, good friend of mine, last night, and he said, I think he alluded to the fact he'd be disappointed if we didn't sign 2 goalkeepers. I don't think we will. We'll only sign 2 goalkeepers, I think, if we loan Sam Long out. And if we sign one on loan, for instance, Josh Griffith, I don't think that we'll then sign a player who's intended to kind of keep Griffiths out the side. I think if we sign a keeper on loan, a Griffiths or a Bursic, I don't think we'll sign Bursic, but if we did sign one of those players, we're not then going to sign a goalkeeper who's going to keep them out, because we want to curry favour with these clubs. I'm all for signing a goalkeeper on loan. I like us to have our own permanent goalkeeper, but I think it's the one area where you can kind of bring a loan player in and they just slot in nice and easily. There's no issue. I mean, Alex Palmer was superb last season. My instinct would be to send Sam Long out on loan to get him 44 games. I'm not talking about Gainsborough Trinity loan because he's well above that level. I'm talking about a conference side, maybe lower end League Two, but certainly a conference side, and just say go and get some senior games. We then bring in a loan player and potentially, do you know what? Potentially put whoever Sam Long's understudy in the academy is on the bench, and then if the loan keeper gets injured, go for the emergency loan. And I think that's the way you're going to see it. I don't think you'll see Lincoln City or the Michael Appleton holding 2 or 3 goalkeepers on contracts. I just don't think it'll happen. The way that we budget, the way that we manage our transfer funds, I think is very frugal, it's very clever, and there will be no wastage, and there will be no player at all that we're carrying, because if it gets to that point, that player will go out. Like last season with Zach Elbazetti, lovely lad. We were carrying him, he wasn't going to get into the side, so he goes out on loan. I think probably Max Melbourne might be forcing his way into contention. It'll be interesting. He's been told he can go out and get football. But at the minute, if we are struggling with injuries at centre-half with Joe Walsh and Lewis Monsmore, I don't think we've seen pre-season, Max Melbourne could actually have a reprieve. You never know. So let's have a look going further down. That was when I froze. Excuse me. So got morning, Neil. Hope you've recovered from last weekend, mate. Neil doesn't like the countryside. Ask him about it one day. He thinks everyone in the country is weird. So Kate, again, not Lincoln related. I think we were interested. What are your thoughts on Paul Mullin going to Wrexham? Now, Paul Mullin was linked with us actually way back in when he was at Morecambe, summer of 2017. So I remember Kevin Cook, I did an article, is Paul Mullin over a move to Lincoln? And Kevin Cook saw him the next day and he said, well, you got that one wrong, didn't you? Which I thought was good because I did. Yeah, it surprised me. I'm critical of players who move for money, and then I sit back and think, well, why would you not? Do you know what I mean? If I'm writing for one newspaper and I really like the ethos of that newspaper, but another one comes in and offers me 4 times the money with half the circulation, what are you going to do? It's a job. Football's a job to footballers. You've got to remember that to us. It's a passion. I choose to sit here at 11:15 on a Saturday morning talking into a camera because I love football. Paul Mullin goes out on a Saturday afternoon to play football because he needs to put food on his family's table. And if Wrexham are offering him 3 times the money that anyone else is, that's where he's going to go and play. Same with Charlie White. Oh, why would you choose Wigan over Celtic? Money. And people look down on them. People look down on players like that and go, oh, they've only gone there for the money. Well, what would you do? What would you do? Would you go, oh, well, Celtic are a better club, I'll go to them? For instance, if you worked in your local shop, your local corner shop, and they were offering you £10 an hour, but Tesco's were offering you £8 an hour, would you go, well, Tesco's are a bigger company, aren't they? So I'll go work for them, more job security. No, you're going to take the money. So, I'm not, when it happens to our club, it hacks me off. And I'll always comment on money because I'm a hypocrite. I'm a self-confessed hypocrite. I've always been a hypocrite. But for me, if a footballer follows the money, they're only doing the right thing by their family. It's a short career. In 10 years' time, nobody's going to give a crap what Paul Mullin's doing, with the greatest of respect. So he needs to put as much in the bank now as he can, bag it in. Talking about Josh Griffiths again. So we've got Gab Sutton's opinion, which is always valued. Josh would make a lot of sense for all parties. 20-odd clean sheets in the league below with Cheltenham, West Brom, trust Appleton too. I get a feeling that that's hinging on West Brom signing, think Andy Lonergan. And the Sam Johnson situation. So I get the feeling that would make a lot of sense. I don't think he's going to play at West Brom. They're in the Championship. They're not going to loan him out to anybody in the Championship. People keep saying, well, Portsmouth are interested. They've just signed the kid from Man City, Gavin, name escapes me. So they're not interested. That's paper talk. For me, I think Griffith is probably close, fingers crossed. But put it this way, we kick off in 2 weeks' time, right? 2 weeks today, I think it is. We'll have a goalkeeper in place. All these people saying we need to sign a goalkeeper. Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's like saying, yeah, we need to breathe in. We need to breathe out afterwards. Yeah, it's obvious we need to sign a goalkeeper, and we will. Chilly bones. People saying, oh, they need to build up an understanding with the defence. Alex Palmer came in, 24 hours before we played Crewe last season? And what had he got? 10, 11, 12 clean sheets by Christmas? Yeah, not that important, is it? So let's keep going down. Cornell, again, do you believe players from the US in the MLS coming to us? No. Frankly, not at the moment, I don't. Not from the MLS. Not with the way that their transfer system works and the season and that sort of thing. I think it's more likely that the link-ups will be at youth level, if anything. But, yeah, who knows? Cornell knew more about Euro 2020 results than me, so he might know more about this than me as well. Quickly, good morning to Jacob. All right, pal, hope you're well. I think you went to Boston. Hope you enjoyed yourself there. So I've got, why aren't these working now? I don't seem to be able to take comments on and off. There we go. Sorensen is an unknown quantity to me, perhaps for the City fans as well. Should we be pumped for this move? It's like I've just said, I think every move you should have an element of optimism about. Every move on paper, you should be positives. I think if you were Burton signing the lad who'd been abroad for 2 years and previously got kind of an average scoring record, you'd probably say underwhelming. But I hate that saying. A player signs for your club and you go, well, that's underwhelming. You don't know what he's like. You don't know what he's going to be like at your club. Paul Mullin had scored single figures nearly every single season up until Cambridge last year. So they might have said underwhelming Paul Mullin will be starting as our 10. And then he scores 32 goals and they win the title. Football fans genuinely know very, very little. We all pretend to know plenty, but we genuinely know very, very little. And what we judge is what we see. And that's where we should reserve our judgment, really. So, but yeah, that would make the likes of me redundant then, wouldn't it? Which wouldn't be much fun. So let's have a look. 3-year contract at Wrexham is what Pete says. Yep, indeed it is. So it's, job security as well, isn't it? Easy to criticise, really easy to criticise. Put yourself in the lad's position. 1 year at Blackburn where he might get farmed out on loan after 6 months back to Morecambe and end up as a nobody, or 3 years on big money at Wrexham, which helps pay off half his mortgage. I know which one I'd take. Morning, Gav. Not long now. You've got your season ticket, pal. Looking forward to being back in the stands. And I think that is it. What we got from Jacob. What do you think of the new player for Lincoln? I think he will be good. Yeah, I agree, Jacob. I think we've just been chatting for that. I think when you look at all 4 of our new signings, I think they've all got strengths that will be really useful for us. If I was asked to get excited about one, it might be a surprising one, but it's actually Chris Maguire, because I think at times we needed that experience and we needed that kind of calming influence up front. And I think with Maguire, we've got that. And I think we've also got an incredibly talented footballer. We've signed a 32-year-old who plays out wide, and you might think, well, he might like pace, he might like this and that. As Sunderland fans, which they prefer Wyke or Maguire, 90% of them will probably tell you that they would have preferred Maguire. So there we go. I've got a couple of others. So, Kay, interesting point. Saying your signings are underwhelming is okay in certain situations. For example, when we made the permanent signings of Facey and Broughton. Don't think Facey was underwhelming at the time, was he? Would Ashley Grimes have scored all the goals he did without Delroy Facey? He certainly didn't score afterwards. So I didn't actually think Facey was that underwhelming at the time. And Drew Broughton, on paper, you looked at Broughton and you thought maybe that's what we need. Maybe he's the aggressive edge. They weren't. So hindsight says that we can say that they were underwhelming. But at the time, I'm not so sure. I'm really not so sure. Now, Steve Torpey, that might be different. Steve Torpey, maybe you can say underwhelming at times, but I'm not convinced. Mark Stallard could have been. Stallard was very Torpey-ish, wasn't he, when he came to us? Meant to be at the end of his career, not, and what did he do? He was superb. So I just think it's really easy to judge in either direction. I think Mark has got kind of a point here as well. We get so animated about new signings and forget what we have. Sanders could be like a new signing. Rowan linked to Premier clubs. Melbourne fighting for places. And Sanders is one I'm really interested to see. I have some slight concerns. The interview he did with The Athletic, where he said he didn't know where Lincoln was. And it was only as he was getting up here that he thought, well, it's a long way away. Wonder if he's settling. I don't know. I think that he's got huge potential. I do think he's a long-term successor to Liam Bridcut if we can get him fit. And obviously, he's played quite a bit in pre-season. He's just managing to crowbar him into the side. And as I keep saying, I've been saying this all season, Theo Archibald, I said it all last season, I really think there's a footballer in that kid. I don't think he got an awful lot of chance last year. It was Zach Elbazedi got the nod in the EFL Trophy. Archibald was obviously injured for a couple of months. He started out late. I'm really hoping to see more from him because he's a player I think has really got it. Do I think the transfers will ramp up, Lee Adelson? No, I don't think that we're going to start making 5 or 6 transfers unless players move out, because I don't think we need it. I think I did a squad count with the new signing with Sorensen is at 22. So we're not going to go into the season carrying 27. We might sign one more permanent. We might sign a couple more loans. I think a keeper on loan. I think maybe a wide man permanent. I don't know. I don't think that we're going to suddenly have a whole raft of new signings coming in. Genuinely, I don't. It's not like last season. And that's not necessarily the way to success. New signings are not necessarily the way that you go about achieving huge amounts of success. What you've got to do is build slowly and steadily. And you look at the likes of Peterborough and the likes of Hull last season, who were promoted automatically. A bulk of their side had been kept together and they just added here and there. And I think probably we underestimate the likes of Lewis Fiorini and Dan and Lundaloo because we haven't seen them play. We saw Brennan Johnson, we saw Morgan Rogers, but when they came in, we knew very little about them. If those two, Lundaloo and Fiorini, are the players that Johnson and Morgan Rogers were, then actually what do we need? Do we really need to make all the signings? So no, I don't think so. I don't think it's huge. Neil Carlton, great question. This one, it's not going to come out. But he said without any support for heathen. And finally, Richard Cross again. I can't. They're not flagging up. I don't know what's going on. Richard, I really have an opinion on any player until we see them all as a unit on the pitch. It may take 5 games to get going. Balls. It may take 5 games to get going, but I have faith in the system. don't know what West Blend means. So there we go. I've got more comments coming in. I can't click on them. So Gab Sutton reckon Bramwell and Lundaloo could have big parts play possibly Scully as well. Lincoln need players who can offer this side a bit of forward drive, especially with Aaron and Johnson gone. Don't think Ioma offered a lot of forward drive. It did play right out on the right flank. Ioma more in the centre of defence. A nightmare. So look, thank you everybody for your support. My internet is clearly playing up, which is a real pain. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. I'll try and do a couple more through the season, hopefully when my internet's not playing up quite as much as it is at the moment. Thank you very much and enjoy your Saturday.